All right, good evening, everyone, and we'll call the meeting to order. We begin this meeting as we do all of our meetings just by acknowledging that we're holding this gathering on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish people, specifically the Lekwungen-speaking people known today as the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations, and their connections to these lands continue to this day. I'll also just point out that these meetings are live streamed and archived and available for future viewing. So if you come and speak at the microphone at any point, you will be recorded. And I'll give you some guidelines as to what to do in that situation if you come forward. First up, we have a presentation of a commission, and this is a real pleasure for me to do. We're very proud to recognize our own Chief Constable, Andy Brinton, tonight with the honor of the provincial appointment as commissioned officer. This is an opportunity to present the certificate on behalf of the provincial appointment as a commissioned officer tonight. Chief Brinton joined Oak Bay Police as Chief Constable in 2014 after, I believe, 32 years with the RCMP. His leadership and his positive impact extends far beyond Oak Bay's borders as he engages in many provincial and even national initiatives. On behalf of the District of Oak Bay, I'd like to express our thanks to Chief Brinton for his service, and it's really my pleasure to present this commission award. So if I could, I'll come down there and you can take a picture? This is the place for the audience to ooh and ah. Look like you're enjoying yourself. You're in my way. Did I get photo bomb? And I'd like to thank Chief Brinton for coming tonight. This is probably the least thing he likes the least in the world is having to be hauled up and acknowledged in public like that. So thank you for doing that. I also we have a less formal presentation to give tonight as well, but it's a good news story at the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities event this year. Councillor Zelka won the opportunity to choose a deserving nonprofit in the area for the Fortis BC Community Giving monies. And so he has chosen a couple of very, very deserving recipients in the Urban Wildlife Stewardship Society and the Oak Bay Green Committee. And tonight we're just going to have a presentation of that check from Fortis, and I believe we have Debbie Warren from Fortis here. Thank you, Ms. Warren. And we have Felicity Bradley and Pamela Mountjoy who will be receiving the checks on behalf of the Green Committee and Urban Wildlife Stewardship Society. So if you can all come forward, we'll do the official handing over of checks. And if Councillor Zelka, do you want to come forward as well, since it's your... Back and forth we go.
Yes, on behalf of, Councillor Zelka and Fortis BC, just wanted to recognize the Urban Wildlife Stewardship Society and Oak Bay Green Committee for your good work in the community.
Well done.
Thank you. And thank you so very much for their kind generosity. Very much appreciated. And Oak Bay residents as well.
Wonderful. Have a picture? Jonathan, you want to? First of all, want to get a picture?
You get the good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pretty sure I just took a video of you all.
If not, you can still live stream.
And thank you, Deborah.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Councillor Zelka, is there anything you just want to? I know you had to choose from a lot of very deserving entities. Did you want to just say a couple of words about your your choices.
Thank you very much, Chair. I very much appreciate your indulgence with this presentation in the middle of a meeting and with an opportunity to say just a couple of words. I certainly want to say, first of all, thank you so much, not only to the AVICC, but also to Fortis for their commitment to community in British Columbia and also here in Oak Bay. Very much appreciate their natural gas and electrical products. I'm sure we're all customers to in one way or another. So it was very difficult, as you pointed out, to choose a deserving nonprofit in Oak Bay. So I had to split between the two. The Urban Wildlife Stewardship Society is working very hard at constructively, creatively addressing an issue that has befallen us, and like Fortis, it's a province-wide initiative that has province-wide attention, and I'm very much appreciative for all of the volunteers, the massive number of hours that have gone in by a number of dedicated people to, and I wanted to take that opportunity and also remind everyone, please register on the Oak Bay website to allow the UWSS scientists to come onto your property with basically pre-approve their opportunity to do the immunocontraceptive this summer in Oak Bay. I also wanted to briefly say thank you to the Oak Bay Green Committee. When people would say, oh, we can't do that in Oak Bay, I really appreciated volunteers who would come along and basically would gently move people out of the way and just get on with it. For example, when it was time to create a tree protection bylaw, it was the Oak Bay Green Committee that stood up and stepped up and did it. When it was time to do recycling in Oak Bay, it was the Oak Bay Green Committee that showed us how to do it. And today they are still showing us in some ways how to do it by doing some of the aspects of the plastics and recycling at Carnarvon Park once a month. So I very much appreciate all the work they're doing, and I look forward to further pokes in our district side from this deserving nonprofit continuing to show us how to make the environment better for the future. Thank you again.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Now, item number 2 on the agenda, we have adoption of minutes, the council meeting July 8th, special council on July 15th, and committee of the whole on July 15th.
Move adoption.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, changes, corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Mayor's remarks. I'll be very brief. We are heading into summer, so we're going to have a break until September, barring any special needs for any special meetings. So I want to just express my thanks to council for all the work that's gone in this term. It's been a lot. It's done a lot of new things. And there's been some long meetings of late as we try and wrap up business before the summer break. So just want to express my thanks to council and also to staff who have put even more hours into all the work that goes into these meetings. So thank you for all of that. I think they're going to look forward to a time without council looking over their shoulders for a month to get some work done. I also would just reiterate what Councillor Zelka said. We have a week ago to date started an online registration. So if people have deer in their yard and would like to pre-approve the scientists to come on and do their good work, that's coming forward. Last I heard, which was I think yesterday, we had over 500 registered already. So obviously a lot of interest out there in dealing with the problem. So thank you very much for that so far, but just putting it out there. With that, public participation period. This is a chance for anybody who wishes to come forward and address council on items of interest to do so. We have a maximum of 20 minutes allocated, up to 3 minutes per speaker. Please just come right on down to the microphone. And the process here for everybody is just, if you could just write your name so we have the correct spelling for the minutes. We just state your name clearly into the microphone, your municipality of residence, and a little green light will pop on, and you will have your time to speak. Just start speaking. It's all good.
Okay. Mayor and Council, my name is Ken Grant. I live in the proposed Heritage Conservation Area. I encourage you to add 1561 York Place to the Heritage Register. Doing so would be a great benefit for the community, present and in the future. Our OCP directs us to conserve our Oak Bay history and heritage. So here's a great opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
as fast as I can. Mayor and Council. Bob Wallace, I live at 1584 Prospect Place, also in the proposed Heritage Conservation Area. I think the dangling around of 1561 York Place as being abominable. And I believe that the original plans were what is evidently going ahead. After 3 years of negotiation, I think there's been not real stewardship on some part and honesty on the other part. So I am quite annoyed at this. The area is replica, is the start of a heritage area. To say that we have a heritage area is actually laughable. After just coming back from Europe and seeing 1400 and 400s and everything else. But we have to start some way. And it has the area has an area that is cohesive in its appearance. They're not all heritage. I do not live in a heritage house. But to not be registered would, by all of us, which we all have done except this one, then I think it is behooving to make sure. The other thing I would say very briefly, trees are controlled in our area very dramatically, and they should be. They provide a lot of things. But rocks are also part of the ground. And I think the use of blasting and doing things that create a different topography on a massive scale, I think is wrong, because it is part of nature. And to destroy nature in its original way is not correct, in my opinion. We happen to have a house that is cement or concrete on rock, so we don't have even a crawl space. But this is abnormal. But there can be some better control of blasting, not only on Prospect Place and York Place, but all through the community, because it is a part of nature and should be kept. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak? I'll ask one more time before I move on.
Good evening. I've just got in late last night, so I'm coming over some jet lag. But I was at a delightful family wedding in Toronto on the weekend, and gave me an opportunity to see my 96-year-old dad and my 94-year-old mother, which got me thinking on the plane coming home, thinking of heritage.
Mr. Prince, can you just state your name and municipality for the record? On the
My name is Michael Prince, and I am a long-time and committed and involved resident of Oak Bay. And the topic of my remarks to you this evening is the proposed addition to the Community Heritage Registration or Register of 1561 York Place. My wife, Karen Walsh Prince, and I have submitted an email letter earlier today. I hope councillors have received that. I will not go over that material. So later this meeting, you will consider a resolution from a staff report. The council received that report outlining the potential of placing this property on Oak Bay's Community Heritage Register. I would ask that you not only receive this report, but that council pass a motion to actually place this property on the Heritage Register. I'll touch on 3 points. First of all, as I said in our email letter, it's the absolute minimum or least council can do. One reason is given the deep community engagement and participation in and around heritage conservation in this area, and certainly this property is in the heart of that neighborhood and area. So there are strong expectations and anxieties as to the future of that property and particularly its heritage assets. Second reason is recognizing that the owner, Mr. Miller, who's here, and I've had the pleasure of many meetings with Mr. Miller since Christmas time, has said on a number of occasions he's recognized and appreciates the value of the heritage assets on this property. Putting this on the register has no legal impact or constraints on the property owner. So it's really of largely symbolic and educative function. But those are important things in public policy, to educate and to communicate strong symbols. The third reason is that this property inevitably will be subdivided sometime in the future, either by the current property owner or by some future property owner. And any way to recognize the future significance of the heritage assets, even by a simple symbolic gesture as a resolution to putting it on the register, is significant in that context. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Prince.
Marion Cumming from Oak Bay, very fond of the Annandale neighborhood and the prospects for the HCA. And I agree with the previous speakers that the heritage legacy associated with historic Annandale deserves further recognition. And I'm grateful that Mike Miller, the owner, is here this evening. He may not be aware of a recent email that Bill Jameson sent to the mayor offering to move and, well, to use his expertise towards moving and preserving the carriage house as a future Oak Bay museum. And he did ask if there would be some way of allowing more time, if Mr. Miller would be able to do that. So I hope he will take that into consideration, and that can be part of the ongoing discussions related to what I hope will be recognition on the Heritage Register of the historic wall and carriage house. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cummings. Is there anybody else who wishes to come forward and speak at this time?
Hi, I am actually the aforementioned Bill Jameson. And I just thought I would add to a little bit of to Marion's comments that there's been some interest in some very preliminary discussions with some people in the community about this idea that perhaps if the carriage house could be relocated possibly onto municipal land in a way that was would allow it to be possibly turned into a modest museum, which would perhaps highlight Oak Bay's history and heritage. We are sort of in the very early stages of trying to set up a little bit of an organization that might be able to accomplish that. Of course, as I say, it's very early at this point. The intention would be to ultimately to have a self-supporting organization that would not drain resources from the municipality, but that would have access to a small portion of municipal land in a key location in order to be able to make a viable, modest museum. Again, very early, and as Mary mentioned, of course, obviously timing is of the essence here in terms of being able to put together some kind of a viable plan within the constraints that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jameson. Does anybody else wish to come forward at this time? I'll ask one more time. Is anybody else wishes to come forward to speak to council? All right, seeing no more. Thank you very much for all those who came forward to speak. Next up, we have a presentation from BC Transit. Tonight we have Lindsay Taylor, who's senior planner, and is going to give us an update on the Jubilee area plan, which has been going through multiple iterations over quite a few months now. So welcome.
Great. Thank you for having me tonight. Good evening, Council. My name is Lindsay Taylor, and I'm a senior transit planner at BC Transit. And I'm the lead for all planning initiatives in the Victoria Regional Transit System. So tonight I'm here to present about the Jubilee Local Area Transit Plan. The plan boundaries extend from South Oak Bay into Cadborough Bay and is bordered by Shelburne and Richmond to the west. So how we came about this plan is we have a 25-year transit future plan, and it identifies goals and targets for us to reach over the next 25 years and sets a plan of how we want to improve and expand our service. In order to reach these 25-year goals, we decided we would do a local area transit plan. So we're doing a series of 9 of them throughout the region. And this will look at more medium-term improvements, service and infrastructure improvements, and that will help us reach that 25-year goal. So really it supports the implementation of the Transit Future Plan, and it identifies service and infrastructure improvements for us to work into our annual service planning. The planning process is about 2 years in total. At the beginning of the plan, we start looking at existing documents here, so OCPs, master bicycle plans and pedestrian plans, neighborhood plans, not only in Oak Bay, but in Saanich and in Victoria as well, making sure that this plan is going to marry with everything that we are seeing in those plans and the plans that you guys have for the future. After that, we go to a phase of consultation where we ask the community, what are your needs for transit, and are we meeting those today? What gaps exist, and what would you like to see addressed in this plan? Following that, we do a workshop with staff and also neighborhood stakeholders who have identified they're interested in participating in this process. And we develop some routing concepts that we would bring to the public in a second phase of consultation. So that last phase where we brought those route concepts to the public was this spring, so 2019 in the spring. We heard a lot of great feedback through that process, and so we're just reviewing and revising some of the concepts that were developed in order to make that final plan. Some of the key challenges that we noticed throughout this plan area is it's difficult to travel north to south. So from South Oak Bay up into UVic, it's difficult to make that trip without having to transferring especially. We also saw that it's difficult in general to transfer between routes. There's 5 different what we call hubs in the plan area. 4 of them are minor hubs, and so that's where it's the end of the line for one route or maybe 2 routes. And then one of those hubs is UVic, where you see a convergence of about 5 to 10 routes going on there. So we'd like to create a hub in the Jubilee area to provide more opportunities to transfer within the plan area to both local and regional services. And so that's kind of what we're thinking with this plan, is to not just end routes at the Royal Jubilee, but making sure that we're running those routes through that area to facilitate transfers for residents that are taking transit. So I'm going to run through some of the concepts that we developed and some of the service improvements. I'll go over them pretty quickly, but we'll have some time to talk about them in more detail if you have any questions at the end. So the Route 2, we'd be looking to bring up to a frequent transit network standard. And so what that means is we'd be seeing service along Oak Bay Avenue every 15 minutes or less between 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. So it would be a great improvement for Oak Bay Avenue. And yeah, you'd see a lot more frequent service along there. We would terminate the route at the Oak Bay Marina, which would require us to build new routes that would cover off what's currently 2 variants that are running through South Oak Bay, and then the Willows area as well. We would also be looking to move the Route 7 from Fowl Bay onto Richmond. Richmond is designated a local transit corridor, and so the service levels on the Route 7 match that type of a corridor. To supplement the loss of service on Fowl Bay, we'd be moving the Route 14 from Richmond onto Fowl Bay. And that would also help address any of the pass-ups or our capacity issues that we've been seeing along Fowl Bay as well. The Route 8, which is the one on the right there, we'd be looking to terminate at the Royal Jubilee to not duplicate service, that frequent service that we have on Oak Bay Avenue, and also facilitate transfers again at the hub. But we were thinking about extending some key trips down to Harling Point, and that would help with any of the catchment boundary changes that SD 61 has recently approved. The next route is the Route 14, and as I said, we'd be moving that from Richmond onto Foul Bay, and we are also proposing that we permanently keep that on the Johnson Street Bridge. The next set of routes is the Route 1 and the Route 5, and so that's covering off the existing Route 1 that runs on Richmond right now, the two variants of the Route 2, so from South Oak Bay into Willows. It would connect also, so all of the key destinations along this route is downtown, Fairfield, South Oak Bay, the Royal Jubilee, Willows, the Camosun Lansdowne campus, Hillside Mall, Fernwood, and back to downtown. This route is bi-directional, so it will go in each direction, and it means that people can have a one-seat ride all the way up to Hillside Mall through the Fairfield and South Oak Bay area. So as the bus comes into the Royal Jubilee, it would change its number into a 5 and continue on its way doing that route. The other changes we're proposing is with the Route 11. The Route 11, we're proposing to remove it from the uplands, and we were proposing to keep it on, or to move it to Foul Bay Road, but we heard a lot of feedback about passengers wanting it kept onto Cadborough Bay. So we're making that change in our revisions of the concepts and keeping that in Cadborough Bay, but still taking it out of the uplands. To supplement that service, we'd be introducing a new route called the 18 that would service from UVic into Cadborough Bay, in through the uplands and connect to the Royal Jubilee. We would keep some peak trips in the morning and the afternoon to get commuters going all the way downtown, and then at the end of the day picking them up from downtown and bringing those back through those neighborhoods. The final improvement we'd be looking to make is to the Routes 3 and the Route 10, and we'd be looking to improve the service span. So right now, service ends at about 7:30, 8 p.m., and we'd be looking to extend that service till about 10 p.m. In terms of what we heard through the spring public consultation, is we heard that there is support for overall increases in frequency and also increases in span. So people want to see later, more frequent service. We heard the desire to maintain service along Cadborough Bay Road, which was great. We addressed that through the Route 11 revision. We heard that it was important for students to be able to continue to get to school by transit, and that's really important for us as well. So we're working with SD 61 and looking at what opportunities there are to make sure that students have key trips where they'll be able to get to and from school. We heard that there's a desire to maintain frequency in the Fairfield area and the South Oak Bay area. So by extending that Route 8 and improving the service span on the Route 3, we're hoping that that will satisfy that feedback as well. We also met with city staff at the City of Victoria to talk about their AAA bicycle network. And so we're proposing now to move the Route 1 off of Richardson and down into Fairfield, and the Route 5 from Haltane onto Bay Street, and that's to line up better with their cycling network. What our next steps are is we're right in the middle of costing all of these options to figure out what would all of this cost, how many buses would we need to improve all of to make all of these service improvements. We're then going to prioritize as to when we think that they should happen as staff, draft them up into a document, bring that to the commission for adoption, and then we'll work with the commission to prioritize as to when they would want to make those service improvements. So that's all of my presentation. I know that's a lot to digest in 10 minutes, so I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm happy to go back to any slides if we need to.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Other questions? Councillor Zilka and Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you so much for your presentation. It's great to see expansions of the service. I presume they're population driven to some extent?
Yeah, a lot of it is based on demand. A lot of it is based on what sort of development's going on in the area. So we have a development referral program where we receive applications to comment on from a transit perspective, but that's also a cyclist and a pedestrian perspective. So very in tune with what's going on in the area and how we can make sure that the service is delivering what's going on.
Wonderful. If I may continue, you're talking about taking or moving transit off of Henderson in the northern part of Oak Bay, above Lansdowne. What routes were you going to continue down Henderson? I wasn't quite clear from the pictures that you showed. 7 and 8.
So it would still maintain service on Henderson. I think Henderson's serviced by if we were to make these changes, the 14 and the 15, so still quite good service. It would be the 11 that we would route through the back, but it currently does that today.
Wonderful. And I also wanted to ask about speed limits. I know on Henderson it's 40, and there's certainly a study waiting to be actioned to regularize or standardize speeds throughout Oak Bay in the 40 range, with some exceptions, I understand, in 50s and 30s, but more 40s than you see today, I believe. How will that impact service, and has that been taken into account with these service adjustments?
We haven't done any analysis on that yet, how that will impact our run times. We make schedule adjustments we make them 4 times a year. So if we're noticing that there's any impact to service, we'll make some adjustment to the run times on those routes. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great.
Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much, and thanks very much for your presentation. I just have a question on one of the routes, which is the route that goes from Willows Beach to downtown. Is what you're proposing now that you'd have to transfer on that route to get from Willows Beach to downtown?
You wouldn't have to transfer. So if you were taking a 5, you would stop at the Royal Jubilee Hospital. The sign would flip to be a 1, and you could continue on your way. There would be more direct service to downtown from the Royal Jubilee Hospital if you wanted to transfer.
Okay, so if the number 5 is the green line, correct?
Yes.
So it would go from Jubilee Hospital down to Willows Beach and then all the way around to downtown. So it's just a much different route than having to transfer from if you transferred when you were at Royal Jubilee Hospital. Is that right?
I think I understand. What
Sorry,
you're
yeah,
saying.
it was a bit convoluted.
So let's say if you're traveling from Willows,
Yeah.
you on the number 5, which is the green line, you
Yeah.
would travel to the Royal Jubilee Hospital.
Yeah.
The sign would change you into 1, and you could continue on your way back to downtown.
I
Or
see.
you could transfer onto
I see, I
we're
see.
looking at having about 5 or 6 routes there that are
Right.
traveling to downtown.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm really impressed that you got all the numbers and all the routes without having to consult your notes. I mean, wow, I don't know what kind of maps you have in your head, but I'm really impressed with that. I'm just curious as to this is based on responses you got from the surveys you took. Are they categorized in the order of the volume of the responses, or are they just simply for presentation?
Completely random.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Zelka.
Thank you for letting me speak a second time. I did want to ask one question about rail, near and dear to my heart. I know this is fundamentally a spoken rail system to some extent in terms of how you've set up some of the areas of concentration that you then roll your lines out of. But has there been much work going on between BC Transit, the province, and the Island Rail Corridor, and some of the studies that they're in the middle of right now?
Yeah, so we received direction from the province as to the type of service we should pursue. So in terms of the ENN line, the province is studying that, and we'll receive direction if there's anything that we should look at that further. In terms of what we can do now, we're actually trying to grow our system as a grid network, as opposed to a hub and spoke kind of a pattern. We still want to make sure that we have those hubs that are major transfer points, but by providing a network, it just facilitates transfers and helps people get places a lot easier. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Lindsay. The only other question, I have a couple of quick questions. Just curious, what are the yellow circles on that map, what are they indicating?
Yes. So what the yellow circles are showing there is if we do move the route off of Haltane onto Bay, there's a bit of a gap there. We strive to meet a 400-meter walk distance to frequent transit. So those are going to be beyond 400. So it might be 500 to 700 meters in some places.
Okay, thank you. And I guess just a general comment that I noticed that this is the Jubilee area, not the Jubilee Oak Bay. A lot of the other areas are named by the municipality, and sometimes people look at that and they have no idea that we're talking about their bus routes. So it might be worth just changing the name of this at some point.
You know,
but-
I agree. It is a little bit funny that it's called the Jubilee. I think it's because the focus was supposed to be on the Jubilee Campus Hub, and that was trying to get across in the name. But I completely agree.
And I will just reiterate also what Councillor Braithwaite raised. There are times, particularly when Oak Bay Tea Party is on, but even during this peak of summer when everything else slows down, we have thousands of people literally going to Willows Beach and nowhere. People do take the bus a lot because of the parking limit. So it's something to consider maybe in the summer routes to shift that a little bit to be a bit more direct if that's possible. It's something to
Yeah,
consider.
no, that's
because it
great
is a-
feedback.
All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for
thank you.
taking the time to come here. It's very much appreciated. And I would also just like to express I heard multiple times over the months leading up here ideas and things that were brought to BC Transit, and many of these changes reflect those requests, those ideas, and just want to just say thank you for actually listening to the concerns and doing what you can within everything's imperfect.
For sure.
To try and address those.
Well,
So thank
this
you
is
for
our
that.
opportunity to improve service here.
Yeah.
So it's been a pleasure to work on this project.
Very
Thank you.
good. Thank you, Stella. No, it's just item number 6. We have just a request from the City of Prince George. This is obviously going to UBCM. The appropriate thing here is really just a motion to receive the correspondence. And
Move receipt.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. Item number 7. We have the supply and delivery of waterworks and sewers fittings pipe request award PW06 2019. Mr. Brozick.
Through you, Your Honor. So our request for quote went out for the supply and delivery of waterworks and sewer and fittings and pipe related to it. And submissions we received from Iconics, EMCO, and Andrew Sherritt. We evaluated each proposal and recommended award of sections 1 and 2 as line by line. These sections relate to servicing work with materials that are required throughout the year. And these quotes are outlined in Appendix A. Sections 3, 4, and 5 are works related to capital projects. These materials are typically ordered all at the same time from one supplier, which streamlines the ordering process and simplifies warranty issues related to these products should any arise. So upon evaluating all the quotes, it's recommended that sections 1 and 2 be awarded to the proponent based by line as outlined in Appendix A, and sections 3, 4, and 5 be awarded to Iconics Waterworks in the amount of $42,080.51.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brozick. Is there any questions? I'm not seeing any. Just one quick question from me. Many of these items are very close in price between the different suppliers, but a few are varied. What is the mechanism used to ensure that when procuring these, that there's a minimum standard, or that the highest quality is met, to make sure that there's no sort of shortage of lifespan when we're ordering one product over another?
So all pipe and fittings that we put out for tender must conform to the latest AWWA specifications. So that's the American Waterworks Association, which was established in 1881 as an international nonprofit scientific and educational association. And they have been putting out standards since 1908. And before anything goes in the ground, it has to meet the latest specifications from AWWA.
Thank you very much. We can deal with all of these recommendations as one motion. Just move where somebody wants to make a motion.
So moved.
Just to move the recommendation.
So moved the
Yeah.
recommendation.
Yeah. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? And opposed. Thank you very much for that. We're up to item number 8, Memorandum of Understanding. This is a regional concept of operations for emergency response in the capital region. Is this Ms. Varela or Mr. Chief Hughes? Chief Hughes,
That would be
welcome.
Chief Hughes, Your Worship. Good evening to you and Council. The Memorandum of Understanding you have before you was developed by the Regional Emergency Management Partnership, or through REMP. What this seeks to do is to allow a regional coordination between municipalities, provincial government, First Nations, of course, and the capital region. Due to the fact we're all very aware that major emergencies and disasters don't recognize municipal borders or regional borders. We just have to look back to the snowstorm of '96. We can have a look at what happened with the tsunami warning just as of late. And when you look at the regional coordination and the communications that are required across jurisdictional boundaries, this memorandum of understanding for the concept of operation is meant to address a number of those problems. This memorandum would allow, at the CAO level, a coordination of resources and information sharing amongst the various municipalities, electoral districts, First Nations, and the Capital Regional District, as well as the province. Currently, the Provincial Regional Emergency Operations Center is located out on Keating Crossroad. And during a major disaster, that pre-OC for the Vancouver Island region could be supporting up to 8 regional districts, 52 First Nations, and 37 municipalities. So we can see in our area, in the capital region here, how it would be very important to make sure that our region has a voice. And this would help ensure that we have a united voice during those periods. This memorandum, there are provisions for out clauses if there was any concerns. There is no cost attached to it. The local area administrators are in favor of it, and I think it's a great first step towards increased cooperation in the region.
Thank you, Chief. Further questions? Councillor Green.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Chief Hewson, thank you very much for the report and for the memorandum. Just a question. I know this will improve our state of response. What about state of readiness? Is that something that you feel this will help to address as well? Thank you.
So through you, Chair, as far as our state of readiness, each local community is still going to be fully responsible for ensuring our local readiness. However, on a regional scale, this memorandum also outlines requirements for exercising and tabletop model scenarios and practicing and training with it every couple of years. So it will make the region it will allow for more collaboration and cooperation and I would anticipate a higher level of readiness region-wide.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair. I've got, I guess, a comment and a question. I'll start with a question. Preceded by a small statement. As a new councillor a couple of years ago, I recall your predecessor was recently elected to head of the CRD. And at that time, as there's a new liaison for the emergency program, suddenly I found myself off to emergency operations training. Because what I found out, and I was very pleased to hear that the CRD has its own operations center, probably under the auspices of RAMP, I presume. The Regional Emergency Management Program operated in the CRD area. And it looks like the CRD has its own, essentially, emergency operations center separate from the separate local authorities. So it's very interesting to hear that the chair of the CRD would be heading off to head that group, leading Councillor Braithwaite and I to learn how to be emergency operations, I guess, whatever policy people, whatever they stick us when we're doing emergency operations work. So I wanted to ask, where is the Emergency Operations Center for REMP, and how is that activated? If I just wanted to ask that first question, if I may.
Chief Hughes.
Okay, so the Regional Emergency Management Partnership is really there's a steering committee to organize regional issues, because it has been a long outstanding issue having all the municipalities cooperate in regional districts together. Now there is an EOC at the CRD building, and then there is a secondary EOC there as well. So they actually have facilities for 2 with redundant backups and whatnot. Now this memorandum does not create any extra levels of authority or anything else. It's just a way to allow the existing districts and electoral areas to allow them to communicate and coordinate their actions, but it doesn't add another layer within the system.
And one final thing, if I may. I noticed in the agreement it defines emergency management as systems and processes for preventing and mitigating, preparing for, responding to, and recovery from emergencies and disasters. Can you share how Oak Bay is in the area of preventing and mitigating the aspects of emergency management today, please?
So in the areas of prevention and mitigation, I mean, we have our emergency program education for our residents. We have a lot of preparation that's taking place. When we look at mitigation, we can look at things as simple as where we're locating some of our facilities or infrastructure when we're looking at rebuilding. We look at seawater rise, for instance, and the building code, and we look at where we're positioning buildings. And again, we get into the bigger picture of overall planning. And there's still a lot of work to be done there when we look at mitigating risk, but I think we're on the right path.
And I very much look forward to supporting you on that very important work. If it's appropriate to move the motion to...
Please do.
I'd like to move the recommendation to support this, please.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? I guess my thanks to you and all the people that have been working on this, including the Chief Administrative Officer. I know this is a first step, not the end point, but it's an important first step to see us have a more coordinated approach. So thank you for the work done. Councillor Zelka?
Since there's no recommendation in the report, it specifically is option number 1.
To the CAO be authorized to sign the MOU. Okay, was my understanding, but thanks for clarifying that to make sure we're all voting on the same thing. So it's good. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, unopposed? Thank you. We have Oak Bay Advisory Planning Commission minutes, or May 7th.
Move receipt.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, unopposed? Oak Bay Heritage Commission minutes of May 14th. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? Thank you. And Advisory Design Panel minutes of June 4th.
Move to approve?
Yeah, it's receipt, I think. Yeah, move receipt and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? New business and verbal reports. Is there any new business? Seeing none. Any report on the Capital Regional District? I don't have anything substantial to bring forward at this time. Are there other verbal reports? Since Councillor Appleton's not here, I'll start at that end and I'll go around the table. Councillor Zelka, anything you have to add? Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just would like to express my thanks to the volunteers of the Heritage Foundation and all of our volunteers that look after Oak Bay's heritage for their ingenuity of creating the Heritage Scavenger Hunt that was hosted last Saturday. And it was, I think that the participants enjoyed it, and it was really refreshing to hear comments on different styles of heritage architecture from much younger voices, listen to discussions on whether what they had witnessed was real or fake. In other words, their take on facadism. But it was really nice, and so I really thank the volunteers for the time and the effort, and really coming up with a remarkably well thought out program. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you. I just have, I wanted to share with you, and I've asked them to bring some over to the hall to make available to the public. There's a new refreshed, not new, map is produced by the Oak Bay Tourism Committee, and it's a wonderful map of Oak Bay, and it provides really good information for visitors to our community and for locals that aren't as well educated about Oak Bay as they think they might be. Anyway, I'm hoping these will be available at the hall, and I'm not sure if they have dropped off any, but they have. Thank you, Hazel. So please take a look. It's worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much. I just have an update on a couple of events that are coming up. One would be the Oak Bay Car Festival, which is this Sunday on Oak Bay Avenue. Very big event for us. We have thousands and thousands of people that come to Oak Bay Avenue, so if you could take that in, that would be lovely. And also Arts and Culture Days. So if anybody's seen this little flyer, it's all about the Arts and Culture Days that go from August 8th until the 29th, and this is put on by Oak Bay Parks and Rec, and it starts off with music in the park, and there's the Belga Creek Brush Up in there. There's different concerts. There's some a poetry tour. There's a neighborhood hootenanny. You can ask me about that later. And also a movie in the park as well. So that goes from August 8th to August 29th, and all the information would be on the Oak Bay Parks and Rec website. Thanks.
Very good. I'll just also add, since we're so intimately involved in this, the Jeux Francophonie, the Francophonie Games that are coming next year, had an announcement today that the province has officially announced their $500,000 support, as well as the District of Saanich also just on, I think, Monday night approved their $50,000 support for the event. So it looks like things are coming along nicely, and we're looking very much forward to just under, about 3 days under a year from now, that event will be opening up here in Oak Bay. Thank you, everybody, for all that. We have item number 13, which is the heritage referral for property on the Community Heritage Register at 3000 Rutland Road. I'm going to turn to Ms. Jensen. Ms. Jensen, to give a quick overview of this item.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the district received a building permit application for this property to remove one of the 3 chimneys on the existing home. Because that home is located on the Community Heritage Register, a building permit that alters the exterior or structural elements of the home must first be considered by council. The home itself was built in 1914 and recognized as a very good example of Georgian Revival architecture. Noticeable design elements of the home include its symmetrical composition, its porte-cochere, and the 3 brick chimneys. With the heritage significance of the property, council can place a 60-day protection order on the home to determine how they wish to proceed. If council moves forward with that order, the application could be considered by the Heritage Commission at their September meeting and then brought back to council.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen. Are there questions of staff? I'm just Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering when the chimney was decommissioned.
I believe the owner of the home is here, but he may not know the answer to that question either. Mr.
Oh, in terms of they no longer in use, yeah, that would be an owner question. But I just wanted to clarify it's an application to remove.
Is it? We'd like it to get an answer to that question. Is it?
I know the chimney, the application is to remove the chimney. I was just wondering when it was decommissioned, so how long, in fact, it has remained on the building as a non-active chimney, but so just really as a significant attachment to the building.
I don't know if the owner knows the answer to that question, but if you don't know the answer, it's okay. We don't.
I don't know the answer.
Oh, sorry, if you're going to come, you just have to come.
Yeah, sure.
You can have a seat actually at the table if you want, or stand up is fine. If you could do the same format, or just give your name for the record.
Sure. Hi, it's Tom Purcell. I'm the owner of 3000 Rutland. I don't know the answer to that, but when we went back through the original plans, dating back some time, there's no fireplace that is really there. I believe where it comes down to is the mechanical room, so at some point it probably served for coal purposes. When we've looked at it, the renovation that occurred in this house by previous owners was back in 2007, I believe, 2009, I think, somewhere that when they completed, they started and then finished and completed in 2009, and it's never been used. There's no purpose there other than the heating of the current furnace goes through there, and that's it. So I'm happy to address more questions on that, but that's the limited information I have.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. This could be for the owner or possibly for staff. I noticed on the statement of significance, the photograph, that the rather old photograph on the first page only shows 2 chimneys, whereas the more recent photograph shows 3 chimneys. Assuming it was only built with two. Is the one that's being proposed to be coming down one of those original two, please?
Ms. Jensen?
Through your worship, it's merely because of the angle that that photo was taken from. The three chimneys are there.
Okay, thank you. Is there I guess I have a Councillor Braithwaite?
I don't really have a question. I just have a comment. So if you'd rather do questions
I
first,
just
that's
have a
fine.
quick question because I think there's two things that catch me in this. One is we do normally refer things of this nature to the Heritage Commission. However, I also recognize that we have, not done that for some things, particularly where it's things at the back of a building or the purpose of a 60-day protection order is to give council deliberation time to see if we wish to apply protection and utilizing our rights to essentially to designate by decree. So I think there's two halves of this. Is there any best practices here from staff in terms of the front of building, back of building pieces? And just want to confirm that the 60-day protection order is the only endpoint of that, if we wanted to affect this, is to do designation as a means of blocking the building permit.
So, Your Worship, yes, in terms of the last point, that designation would be the only way to continue protection of that chimney beyond the 60-day period if council invoked that. And my apologies, the first part of that question, could you?
It's just whether or not we have any guidelines for when this process. We've had this a couple times at Heritage, whereby relatively minor improvements or changes have happened on the building, and there's been some question about when it triggers this. Do we have any policies internally as to when this gets done? Just noticing this I think it's because the chimneys are mentioned, it would have to come to this body.
I think that's a really good point. In the statement of significance, the chimneys are mentioned, and that certainly causes staff to suggest that needs to go before council for consideration like this. But there are instances where something that is minor and it's not mentioned in a statement might have a review by staff and then just move forward with the building permit. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a best practice, but certainly we do err on the side of if it's a feature that's significant and part of the value of that heritage structure, we bring that before council.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Braithwaite, then Green.
Yeah, so I didn't really have a question. I just was kind of along the same lines of what staff were speaking of, that this is an iconic piece of architecture, and I would feel pretty comfortable sending this along to the Heritage Commission to have them have a look at it before we would make a decision on that. So I think when the time is right, I would be making a motion towards that.
Councillor Green.
Yes, I'm going to support option one, which means that there will be a 60-day protection order placed on the property, and this will be referred to the commission for their review. And I want to just say to the owner, it isn't because we are trying to stop anything. It's just we want to make sure that we have the commission's eyes on the project as well, because of the significance of the building and the chimneys in particular. Thank you.
Councillor Zelka.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'm of mixed minds, because I do appreciate the fact that it's in the back, and specifically the statement of significance makes reference to the balancing of the chimneys and the dormers and the alignment of windows, and I don't see any of the balancing aspect being changed as a result of the chimney in the back being removed. So I don't see any change to the statement of significance as a result of that chimney potentially going. So I would be leaning more towards simply letting it go in this case and treating it as a relatively minor change.
I'm actually just going to jump in here. I'm going to ask, since the owner's here, it's unusual to have someone here necessarily in this case, but maybe it would be helpful. You can stand up if you want, or you can hit the button there. Either way, can you just give us some explanation of why this chimney is coming off and what the nature of the work being done is?
So let me just state that this is my fourth heritage house that I've done. I have another one here in Oak Bay that I must admit, they've been approached many times to ask if it will go on the registry, and I've hesitated because of this. And I have a large family. I have 4 children, and so these heritage houses are lovely and they're amazing pieces of architecture, but they have to function for a modern family. And when you have 6 people in a kitchen and a chimney that goes through the middle of the kitchen that is no longer in use, you start to stumble around and you're facing a brick wall when you're trying to talk to a child, and you can only sit two people at a kitchen island. And so you start to say, okay, how do I keep the integrity of the house and make it work in today's modern environment? And that's really the trick. When you go to London, England, or you go to Paris, or you go to Germany, or you go to New York, you see these amazing structures that have become modern masterpieces because they blended the old with the new. And that's what we're trying to achieve here. And so the real challenge for us is that this chimney, and I'm happy to demonstrate it with floor plans to hand out to you. I made copies because those weren't part of the submission. You can see how the chimney, I have pictures, how it goes right through dead smack of the kitchen aisle. And so you have no choice but to remove it if you want that kitchen to be functional. So if you went down the road and you went down the path, even if Heritage were to look at it, I'm not sure where you get to, because that's still the challenge. It still becomes a functional issue of the house. And we knew that. We took a risk on this, but we assumed, correctly or incorrectly, that we could work and keep the heritage of the house intact and yet still make it work for. It's a large house, but times way back when, those houses didn't necessarily function the way houses and families work today.
Thank you. I'm just going to quick follow up on that. Have you, in your estimation or work done so far, is it possible to maintain the chimney outside and not have it coming through the kitchen? Was that your question? Okay. Sorry, I took away Councillor Patterson's question.
We have looked at that, but then the problem is when we've got engineers involved is that you have to structurally come in, because you can imagine a chimney goes from the top down to the bottom. So we've looked at it, because then once you have nothing supporting it in the kitchen, you have to have some structural integrity in the roof, which would be beam, steel, wood, whatever. And then we looked at slicing the bricks in half to try to keep the integrity of it. And then you start to go through the whole process of, okay, is this really, how important is this one chimney that no longer functions whatsoever? And that's what the balancing is, obviously, in trying to maintain the beauty of this house, but at some point there has to be a little bit of give, and that's what we're trying to achieve here, I guess, is rather than putting steel beams in the house, which would cause greater renovation expense and greater work, to having to rip the roof apart, and then also the lath and plaster that's in the house and putting that in. You stop somewhere where you're saying it doesn't make any sense to do that.
Thank you. Are there other questions? I just look for a motion then.
I would move that option, I think it's option number 1, that says that we would like to put this on the Heritage Register, or the, sorry, I'm looking for the actual verbiage here.
Implement a 60-day protection order?
Yes, implement the 60-day protection order.
Is there a seconder for that motion?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Braithwaite.
I'll speak to the motion. I think that I totally hear what you're saying. I think that the reason that I would like to have this go to the Heritage Commission just for their input is because we are really stewards of Uplands and of those iconic buildings that make up Uplands. And so I feel pretty strongly that I would like to hear what the Heritage Commission has to say. I think that they're going to go your way, but I would like to have that from them just so that I can feel more comfortable, because as an elected official, I think we get asked by the community to ensure that we're protecting the heritage value of Oak Bay, and that's really an important aspect of the way we make our decisions. And so for me, I feel that I really do need to be a steward for that. I think that in the end you're going to get what you want, but I would feel more comfortable having it go through the Heritage Commission first.
With the greatest respect, I feel that
Actually, we just really have to call on you if you're going to. We're just speaking at this point. I know it's a hard place to be at, but we do have a discussion here. We have a motion on the table. It's seconded. Is there any other discussion, Councillor Zalka?
Thank you very much, Chair. I absolutely have to agree with my learned councillor with respect to wanting to move this forward in the process, and we do have a very good process, especially for the uplands, to make sure that we steward those heritage values, especially in that area with the Oak Bay Special Powers Act. However, I'm also mindful that we need to also adapt for modern needs fundamentally, and heritage is heritage values and modern need values. They actually can work very well together. So because this is in the back, and because I don't see the statement of significance changing, I won't be able to support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor May?
I guess my point is, I really do appreciate Councillor Braithwaite's articulation of the need to be stewards for this. But I think in this case, what's being asked and the reason it's being asked and what the applicant intends to do, I think probably what's going to happen is the Heritage Commission is going to move forward. But I do agree that we do need to adapt. And the other thing about this is that if we want people to take ownership and care for these properties, I think we should try to streamline and make these processes as straightforward as possible, and don't encumber applicants with onerous time extensions if it's not really necessary. And I think in this instance, in many instances, it would be very warranted, and I'd want to send it back to the Commission, but I don't see that to be the case in this instance, so I won't be supporting the motion.
Councillor Green?
Thank you, Mayor. As a former member and chair of the Heritage Commission, I would like to assure the applicant that it is never the intention of the Commission to impede applications, to squash plans and dreams for these houses. In fact, we encourage owners, we value owners who are prepared to put the money and time into these houses to improve them and restore them, and I thank you for that. But 84% of residents in Oak Bay in 2013, when a survey was conducted about the value of heritage in Oak Bay, 84% of respondents said that was their number one priority for our community. And I think recently, over the last particularly 9 years, we have witnessed some erosion of the heritage and history of this community through the extent of housing demolitions and so on. So I think at some point it's a sensitive time for the community. So I think this is not an attempt to thwart you. This is an attempt just to make sure that these beautiful homes, as I think Councillor Braithwaite mentioned, that we are good stewards. And that's what the public expects, and I think that's really why I support option one and this referral. And could I ask staff a question, please, Mayor, through you?
Please.
Ms. Jensen, when would the next Heritage meeting be held? I'm just thinking about timing here.
I believe it's September 9th.
September 10th, I think, is the
September
next.
10th.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If this passes, it would go to Heritage September 10th, and then to Special Council on September 12th, I think is the intention of this at this point. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do appreciate the work the applicant has done in maintaining Heritage Home in Oak Bay, and it is very, very important to the community to protect heritage, and also the whole uplands aspect of attached to heritage has even more significance. So I would support sending it to the Heritage Commission for their comments. I too firmly believe that they will support what you are intending to do with the modifications. My only concern is that if it goes to the Heritage Commission, and I hope that this will not detract in any way, but to understand, for them to fully understand what would be necessary to retain the chimney on the roof decommission the portions below the roof, as you have commented on, would require an extensive look at that. So hopefully that will not get brought into that process. I don't believe that it will, and that they will follow the processes that we have in Oak Bay for these homes to go through the review of the Heritage Commission. And I believe you will be supported, but I think it's a right process to follow.
All right, I'll just say my 2 bits on this one. This is one where I think there's no right answer, and I think the pros and cons here laid out. I guess where I tend to fall on this one is if it goes to the Heritage Commission, it has the benefit to the applicant of getting some advice and pieces from the Heritage Commission, and that's free advice that's got some value to it. I do see these the flip side of this, and I think where I'm leading on this one is that there is a unreasonable, I think, fear of heritage in our community that sometimes gets caught up when there's people want to do reasonable amounts of work on their buildings, and I think we have to look at this seriously. If this was to come back and be recommended that we stop this removal of the chimney from the Heritage Commission and not allow any of this, our only option in that case is to designate the house against the owner's will and to stop that from happening. And I could never see myself in 1,000 years doing that. I just couldn't. If this is a part of the requirements to make this house a modern, livable house, then I think that's just a thing. So I'm loath to refer it for 60 days if it's going to come back here and get approved in any case. I see there's wisdom in doing that, but I have that. And I say this just for the record, this is probably my favorite house in Oak Bay. I drive by this all the time and just look at that house and think, that is just such a stunning house. I would never want to see anything done to that house that had a negative impact on it. I think it really is a jewel in our community. So I'm not going to support the motion as is made, but I do understand the wisdom from where it's coming from. Thank you. Any other discussion? I'll call the question. So the motion on the table at this time is to implement a 60-day protection order. All those in favor? 3 in favor. Oh, and those opposed? I'm opposed too. We'll see if it goes the other way, and if not, I guess it just dies on the table as a piece. Can I get a motion to? I guess just refer this back to staff? Actually, I guess at this point, if the 60-day protection order is not enacted by council, that's the end of the process, correct? It goes back to staff to deal with the development permit?
Yes, Your Worship, that's correct.
Or
The
building permit, sorry.
would be reviewed by staff.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of the process. We'll go back to staff to work on it.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right,
It
thank
is
you
a
so
lovely
much.
house. We do love it.
It is a very lovely house, and I appreciate you doing the work that you're doing. With that, we have the next item on the agenda is item number 14, York Place. We have a report of building and planning dated July 16th. There's no recommendation in this, just this actually came from, I believe, myself asking for a report back from staff on the possibility of adding this property to the Heritage Community Heritage Registry. If there anything, Mr. Anderson, that you wish to add?
Yes, Your Worship. Maybe in reference to the report, I'll give a brief summary for the benefit of those in attendance. You are correct that council did direct staff to bring a report back to look at the viability of putting the property at 1561 York Place on the Heritage Register, and also indicating what assets would be included in a register. So the report provides information on the merits of putting the property on a community heritage register, and a register lists properties that contain heritage value or character. So that is what a register is. And a resolution of council, as we've seen just previously, is the method by which property is placed on a register. The register, again, it sounds like we've had a preview already tonight, but it does allow for the placement of a temporary protection order up to a maximum of 60 days on the property. This subject property does have identified heritage values, as we've heard. It includes the rock walls and the carriage house particularly. And these features are outlined in the statements of significance that are attached to the information report that council has. The subject property, however, does have an approved building permit for construction of a single-family dwelling and associated driveway access and servicing of the development itself. This does also include a blasting permit for the foundation work associated with that house, as well as a demolition permit for the carriage house. All these permits have been issued in accordance with the BC Building Code and with the district's bylaws for council and the audience's information. As we may recall, the owner did present to council and did, as we heard, offer an undertaking to provide the possibility of a suitable relocation of that carriage house onto another site in Oak Bay, and agreed to not proceed with the demolition, notwithstanding the permit issued, until the end of August for that carriage house. The owner also has indicated, and I believe they are in attendance, that they do not wish or to provide consent for the placement of this property on the Heritage Register. So, for council's information. And with respect to the rock walls, there is no permit approval process for the rock walls, and so a temporary protection order, for example, wouldn't apply for modifications to rock walls. We're not withholding a permit that isn't issued on an item. So I guess in the end, the net effect from staff's perspective is putting the property on the Heritage Register provides, as I think we've heard, a recognition of the values on that property, and that's principally what we see. So with that, Your Worship, that's my little overview of the report that council has before them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. And I would, if the owner wishes to come forward and say anything, I welcome that, but maybe we can get questions of staff first, and if there's questions of the applicant, we can maybe just invite them forward. And I think you've articulated it very well, and I think it's important to recognize probably the heritage, adding this property, if it's done, would not probably meet anybody's desires. It probably wouldn't meet the worst fears of the owner in terms of constraints, and it probably doesn't achieve the goals of real protection that I think probably many in the community want. It really is just a recognition tool to honor and what is on that site. Other questions of staff? Councillor Name?
Through you, Mayor, to staff, thank you very much for the overview of the report. I'm curious about, I understood you to say that the applicant is not providing consent to this, and I'm wondering if you're able to provide us with some history about, is there a precedent with us imposing a registration on property, or do we usually go with consent? What's our practice in Oak Bay around that?
My understanding is the practice has been consent of owner, and it's most often, I think, the owner is coming forward and asking for the property to be placed on the register, or we've had, I think, groupings of properties placed on the register without the objection of the owners. So that's the typical, and has, to my knowledge, been the past practice in Oak Bay.
And if there were exceptions to the typical practice, what are there? Are you aware? I know that you haven't had the full history, Mr. But are there exceptions to what you're saying is normal practice?
I don't believe so. I think we have 104 properties on the register, and I to my knowledge, the owners at the time were in support of being placed on the register.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, just a follow-up. I was wondering, in light of the fact that the suggestion is that likely this would serve a symbolic recognition of the heritage value of the property, what would the HCA offer in terms of recognition of heritage values, significant heritage values of this property that the registration might not, if any?
In many respects, they are similar. A heritage conservation area does do something a little bit different in that it does place all or some of the properties within that area on what's referred to as a schedule, and they become protected properties. They could be properties that are on the register. They could be properties that are designated. They could also be properties that the community or the district has identified as having heritage value, but they're not designated or on the register. So the HCA is a little bit more comprehensive, and I think it's perhaps a little bit more broad in terms of its application and recognition of heritage values. Having said that, the proposed HCA for Oak Bay is recommending, at least the working group has recommended, that a heritage alteration permit process would be applied to all properties within the heritage conservation area, not just the properties that might be on the schedule. So there's perhaps a tiering of the heritage values or the heritage recognition proposed for that HCA, but there would be a common permit process if there were any activities that were undertaken within that conservation area. The difference between the two would be the application of guidelines and the review associated with properties on the schedule or not. So when you compare it to just placing a property on a register outside of an HCA, there's more activity and more review that occurs within a heritage conservation area. I think that's maybe the real question you had. Thank you.
Well, it was, and so what you're saying is there would be more detail on a statement of significance that would go with the registering of the or no, you're saying the opposite.
No, my apologies. No,
Yeah.
no, it's about the process of review associated with
Okay.
activities within an area that has an HCA, heritage conservation area, versus just a property that has it's on the register.
Okay,
there's a difference there.
So let me just ask it this way, if I may. So what are we getting if we register it versus what would happen on an HCA? What does the community how do we benefit?
I'm going to say, as I indicated in the report, there may be some value in identifying the property on the register as we move into the preparation of the heritage conservation area, but I think that's the limit of the value. There are going to be many properties that are on register, not on register, designated, that I believe will come forward and end up on that schedule in the future HCA.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful. And just one more question, Mr. Mayor, through you. Could you help me understand specifically once a registration is assigned? I do understand we can do a temporary protection order, but how does it encumber the property owner, if at all?
I don't believe it presents an encumbrance on the owner. It might, for example, if there's an action that is, as we've just seen with the chimney, if there's an action that is on an element that's identified in those statements of significance for the property on the register, there is an obligation on the part of myself in a building permit review to move that forward to council to consider whether or not a temporary protection order and some other action might be on there. But that is really the limit of the protection order under a register.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I might add a couple of just my understanding of some of the history as well. My understanding is that there was one round of heritage registries that did occur, almost in an opt-out model. Letters were sent to homeowners, and I know there was at least one that leader said, "I didn't know I was on here. Please take me off now," and that was considered by the council and the Heritage Commission at the time. But certainly the overwhelming, much like designations have come. I think there's only been one designation against the owner's will, and only a handful of the registers, if anything, at that. And I would also just add I think there's two additional benefits, just not quite, they're not large. One is because there's a statement of significance attached to the Heritage Community Registry, that statement of significance forms a formal part of our records. So for historical purposes and pieces, it actually does provide a more detailed and a place in that. And it also just, I think, in a much softer way, just makes that future owners aware of those values, of the values of the walls. And the carriage house is not likely to be there, but should it be there to just so they would be aware of that, so that if they were doing the work, they'd be aware of those values. Are there other questions of staff? Councillor Zelka?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Director of Building and Planning, I presume. The Oak Bay Heritage Designation policy is rather old and I believe was implemented before the Heritage Act was put in place. Oak Bay being ahead of its time. And I understand we have this opt-in process, which is actually, I understand, not part of the Act. I was wondering if the staff could please tell us what the law says with respect to what we're allowed to do here differently from what our policy current or our general policy has been over the last number of years. Thank you.
You're talking about adding to the registry or designation, because they're two different things.
They are two different things. This would be adding to the registry. I understand the policy right now is voluntary, but the law says something different. This is such a valuable property and such a valuable thing. I would love to know how much it might cost if we wanted to designate it or do a forced designation, but I worry that Oak Bay may not have the pockets to be able to afford that. So the question is really about registration in terms of what does the law say differently from what our policy says, please.
The law supersedes our policies, I know that much. Mr. Anderson?
Absolutely, Your Worship, and to my knowledge, we don't have a policy on that register. There might be a practice, and that's what I spoke to in terms of the practice being generally to have consent of owners when the district considers placing properties on the register. And the legislation does allow council to place a property on the register without the same requirements as a designation process, just so we're clear. So there's the ability for council to do a property on the register with or without owner consent.
And the last question, if I may, with respect to us moving forward with a registration versus a designation, moving forward with the registration without the owner's consent, is there a cost or a concern to the district with respect to moving forward with something like that, which granted is different necessarily than our district policy or district practices have been in the past?
Mr. Anderson?
So that Your Worship, is the difference that I just noted. The designation, the legislation does allow for consideration of compensation being paid to an owner by the municipality, but that's a process. The law allows for that to be a consideration when you designate, not when you register.
So I think I heard you say that we're allowed to move forward with the registration without owner consent, and there's no concern with respect to compensation.
That's correct.
Councillor Green? And Councillor Braithwaite?
Yes, thank you. And through you to Mr. Anderson, because this is coming a little ahead of the Heritage Conservation Area proposal, is there an indication, I think, when will the HCA proposal come forward to council? And it's just helpful to know in terms of timing and a fuller understanding of the plans for the area. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The intent is to bring that forward for committee reviews in the fall, and then we would hope that council would also be considering the HCA later this year. Late fall?
Late fall?
Sure.
November?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Braithwaite?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just a quick question. If this was added to the registry, I know that the rock wall is identified in the SOS, but would it include the rock outcropping and the character-defining elements of the property as well?
It would include what's identified in the statement of significance, and to my knowledge, there isn't specific reference to rock outcropping. So
is there a reason that that's not included in there, or it just wasn't thought of at the time? I guess
my understanding is that while there may be rock emerging from the surface of overburden on the property, there isn't a rock outcropping that's been identified as having heritage significance relative to the past use of the property.
Okay, thank you.
There may be some confusion, because in the Heritage Conservation Area, there is some discussion around character-defining elements of the area, but that is not related to this Heritage Registry. Councillor Ney?
One more question, Mr. Mayor, through you to staff. One of the speakers came up and spoke about possibility in the future a subdivision, and I'm just wondering. Of course, we none of us knows whether that would ever happen, but let's say it did. If we registered this property, would there be any increased protection with a registration versus if the HCA comes to completion of this property regarding the significant valued features of the property?
Through your worship, no, it's really the Heritage Conservation Area that provides a process that allows us to pay some more attention through subdivision to what occurs on a property and how it relates to adjacent heritage properties.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. It is a notably weak tool, but I think an important one in some ways where it's appropriate. Councillor Zelka?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I wanted to ask about if it's appropriate, about the potential offer for move or change or somehow to save the building that currently has a demolition permit. I don't know. I would love to hear about what the mechanism might be for us to move forward with that, and whether this registration process would assist or possibly hinder that. Thank you.
I can probably answer that question as well as any. There's an existing building permit on the property that includes the demolition of the carriage house. There was really no tools in our toolbox, even if we to designate today and put a stop work order that only is to stop a building permit from being issued. So that it's already been issued. That work will happen. So what the owner has offered to the community is that they're working around that building in the time being. Mr. Jameson's here and talked to that a little bit about some of the efforts made to find a home for that, but it's separate from anything to do with this registry. The HCA recognizes that building on it, but it does not protect the building in any way, shape, or form. Does that? Mr. Anderson, did I get that?
That certainly helps, and I look forward to further input from various parties. But I do wanted to just find out what the process might be, whether we'll be coming back to council or not, in terms of what might be done in terms of possible municipal lands or other lands that might receive this property. And I would just wanted to express in general that I'm in favor of that. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. I would welcome if does the owner wish to come forward and speak to this at all? It is an unusual process for us to consider this. Either one is, whichever way you want to go is fine. You just need to turn on the microphone. And if you just state your name for the record as well.
I brought glasses this time. If you recall, I struggled last time. Mike Miller, 644 Beach Drive. I'll read a letter, and I brought copies for your consideration, Your Worship. Enough for one council person. However, I'm not sure what the protocol is for that. Dear Mayor and Council, as you're aware, I attended an Oak Bay Council meeting on June 24th, 2019 to discuss the carriage house located at 1561 York Place. At this meeting, I read a letter which is attached that highlighted our family's willingness to work in good faith on a strictly voluntary basis to identify a suitable donor site for the carriage house. I made this offer under the request that the process not result in any further encumbrances to our property. That evening, Council instructed staff to prepare a report for consideration of placing the property on a heritage registry. That staff report is now with you for your consideration, and I would like to make a few points to inform your deliberations, if I may. First, the owners are not in support of putting the property on the Heritage Register. As planning staff note in the report, generally the district has the consent of the owner prior to placing a property on the register. In this case, forcing it onto the Heritage Register is in direct contrast of our request to work on a voluntary basis and not encumber the property, which is outlined in the letter attached from June 24th. Secondly, placing the property on a register does little to provide the district with new tools for preserving the historic elements of the property. The planning report makes it clear that a temporary protection order cannot be applied to the carriage house, as a demolition permit has already been issued for the structure, nor can a temporary protection order be applied to the rock walls, as no district permits approvals are required to modify them. Therefore, this involuntary registration only serves to frustrate the property owners and erode at the goodwill in the process of identifying a donor site for the carriage house. Third, the planning report notes that by placing the property on the register, it may support the inclusion of the property on the schedule in the upcoming HCA, proposed HCA for the Prospect neighborhood. This argument for inclusion is flawed, as council has full discretion to choose from which properties they will and won't include in the anticipated HCA schedule. To that end, the draft version of the HCA included the carriage house and the rock walls on the schedule, so clearly being on the register is not a prerequisite for this inclusion. Additionally, it seems presumptive for council to take action to register the property based on anticipated HCA bylaw, one which staff has not presented to council or collected broad public feedback. I will reiterate that I will reiterate that only I will reiterate that the only clear impact of placing this property on the Heritage Register will be to frustrate the property owners, the same owners the district is relying on to act in good faith as per request to try to preserve the carriage house and rock walls as such. I respectfully request that you do not proceed with the heritage registration.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I made sure I put my glasses on to at the same. You'd feel at home.
I struggled last time.
Are there any questions of Mr. Miller? I don't. There's no questions at this point for you, so I think we're just going to go. We need a. At this point, we're really going to look for a motion, then we can talk to a motion.
Do I get to keep the water?
Yes.
I'll make a motion, Your Worship.
Go ahead, Councillor Green.
I will move option 2, that council consider the property at 1561 York Place and as particularly described in the statements of significance developed for the property and attached to the July 16th, 2019 report be added to the Oak Bay Community Heritage Register.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? I'll go to the mover and seconder first. Nothing? Councillor Zelka, and then I'll go to Councillor Ney.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to, through you, just wanted to clarify to anyone in the room that this certainly is not in any intention to frustrate the owners, but certainly to record for posterity the important aspects of this property, since we know that various permits have already been issued. I certainly want to do whatever I can, hopefully we'll do whatever we can to facilitate the saving of at least one of the building, of at least the carriage house. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ney.
I'm likely to be the outlier on this one, but I'll tell you what's concerning me about what's in the motion, and that is that we have a history of receiving consent from property owners when we register, and here we're doing it without consent and imposing a registration on this property for a reason I haven't been clear about here, why we're imposing it. I haven't heard one reason why. I do understand there are some benefits, but from my perspective, given what I understand what the HCA will offer us in terms of protecting the heritage values of these properties, it doesn't outweigh the precedent of imposing a registration on a property. And when we do things like that, there's reverberations in the community about heritage. So, you know, I personally, if a property owner doesn't want to have registration and we impose it, it sets a mark against the program of heritage in the community, and I'm concerned about that because I'm a strong proponent of the heritage programming and the work of people on that commission who are helping the council to move that agenda forward. So the other thing is that I'm trying to think what is different about this situation here, and I know we've had a grueling process of negotiation over a long period of time, and I know it's been very emotionally loaded for people on both sides of the table, and I do know there's been a lot of community frustration with the final outcome of this. But in a way, for me, this slapping retaliating with a slapping of a imposed registration, I don't, that's what it feels like for me, because I can't see any other legitimate reason for doing this. And I don't think a tit for tat, and I'm not suggesting that's the reason other people are voting here, but I'm saying that for me, I think it could be perceived as that in the community. And I don't think, I think there are other ways to settle what's gone on here. So I do support future protection of this property. I do support what the HCA will do, and I will support it to come to completion to ensure that the protection of this area. But I don't agree with imposing a registration on this particular property.
Thank you, Councillor Ney. Any other comments? Councillor Green, you moved it, so I'll let you speak first, and then Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. And I'm sorry that that this is being done in one sense. It is unique for Oak Bay to make a motion like this around heritage. But unfortunately, I'm here to protect the community as well. It's about the community interest. It's about the historical and heritage significance of this property. And I reread the statement just now. This is an iconic property. And so if nothing else, at least it will be, as the mayor pointed out earlier, in recorded history. There will be the stories, there will be the memories, and there will be reference points to recognize and honor this property. I think, I'm sorry that Mr. Miller isn't agreeable to this registration. There are no limitations to what you can do to the property, however. This is strictly, as someone said, a symbolic recognition of the importance of this property to Oak Bay. But I am here, bottom line, I am here to work on behalf of the community at large. And this is why I made the motion. I believe I am doing this in the interest of my community. I have to live here as well, and I have to meet my residents on the street, and I also have to be accountable. So I'm comfortable with with my decision to move the motion, and actually it shouldn't be a surprise given my 7-year history with the Heritage Commission, first as council liaison, then as member, and then as chair. Thank you.
Councillor Braithwaite?
Thanks so much. And, you know, I honestly hear what you're saying, Councillor Ney. I would never have thought that I would have found myself in a position where I would vote for something like this, because I truly think that it's incumbent on us to listen to an owner of a property and what their want is for their property. If I thought that this was a retaliation, I would not, in retaliation to what has happened, I would not be voting for this. So I really don't think that is anything that I'm hoping that anybody around this table would ever consider. I think the reason I will vote for this motion is because of something that I heard staff say, and that is that it doesn't encumber the property owner. And so that's what's really important to me, because I would not want Mr. Miller or his family to be encumbered by something like this, but I reiterate what Councillor Green has said, in that I feel that I do need to protect this piece of heritage within the community. And you know, they've been working on this HCA for 3 years now. If it goes forward, it'll be the first one in Oak Bay, and to have a property in there that is not, does not have this designation, I think would be almost like a slap in the face of the HCA. So I will be voting for it.
Any other, Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Chair. I too appreciate Councillor Nay's comments and echo what Councillors Green and Councillors Braithwaite said. I think to me, my sense of this is that this is not something that Oak Bay has had any history of doing, nor is it something that Council does lightly. But we do understand that it is symbolic and it doesn't encumber the development that will go forward. To me, though, the fact that the community, be it perhaps a small part of the community, but nevertheless the community banded together to develop the HCA was also a unique opportunity in Oak Bay. And that is not something that is achieved easily. It's very difficult in communities to get a group of homeowners to come together and agree that they have something special and that as a group they will dedicate their efforts to the conservation and protection of the heritage properties. And so that is something I, certainly as a member of council, I feel very strongly that I should be supporting and that I should be respecting. It in no way diminishes my respect for the rights of the property owner. But if the HCA was already in place, we would be recognizing these same values that we are recognizing now with this, albeit symbolic, but still a process that we can follow to give support to that. So I am supportive of this also.
Okay, I have no other comments. I'll just, I think it's important just to reiterate that first of all, I just want to express my appreciation to the owner for everything that the owner has done so far. Has demonstrated his respect for the heritage aspects of the property, from the protection of the walls, the careful decommissioning or taking apart of those of the gate on York, and a lot of, I think, really strong goodwill effort to undertake an HRA in the first place. There was at the end of the day, that community goodwill is the protection that the heritage aspects have. This is a way of capturing that. I do think it's important to reiterate that this is not an encumbrance. I'm sure it feels that way, but I think it's important to recognize this is an empty lot in which there's a new building going on it. This is not taking someone's home and applying a heritage registry to it. This is part of the original Annandale estate and formed part of that history. And to recognize that part in some small way through the statement of significance and having it on the record, to my mind, is reason enough to have it. Particularly given in trying to find that balance, and I appreciate that the owner does not seeks the goodwill. I hope this is seen not as any way not goodwill. This is just really an attempt to capture the stories for the community's benefit and to recognize the importance of that land and the history of Oak Bay and Annandale. Seeing no other discussion, I will call the question. The motion on the table is to add the property to the Community Heritage Registry. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Ney opposed. Thank you very much. I just want to express my appreciation for the very thoughtful comments made by all the councillors at this table. It is a unique item for us as a council. So thank you very much. On to item number 16, which is the official community plan bylaw amendment. This is for the first and second reading of the regional context statement. Mr. Anderson, do you wish to speak to this at all? Or Ms. Jensen? Ms. Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as presented at the July 15th Committee of the Whole, the Capital Regional District has now adopted their new regional growth strategy that was adopted back in March of 2018. The district is now required to update the regional context statement that's contained within our official community plan to show how our plan is consistent with the regional growth strategy. The revised context statement itself includes updates to the existing objectives that are in the growth strategy. It also reflects 2 new objectives contained within the growth strategy, that being one for food systems and one for climate action. So council does have the proposed bylaw in front of them, which has also been reviewed by Capital Regional District staff in anticipation of moving that statement forward to the regional board for their review. Should council give that bylaw first and second readings, it will then be forwarded to the Capital Regional District Board for their acceptance. It would then come back to the district to hold a public hearing and consider adoption of the revised context statement.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen. Councillor Zalka.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just an opportunity to ask a question through to staff before we entertain motions, if you don't mind. In the minutes that we were approved earlier on of the Committee of the Whole, I asked for modifications to this report, or at least I pointed out the fact that we have 2 district school boards in this area, whereas the report still says the formal referrals will only be to 1 school board. Could I please confirm that School District 93 will be included as part of the formal referral?
Ms. Jensen?
That is correct. It would be added.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to ask with respect to the various options that are put forward in the report itself, since it's dated July, whereas the options are described a June report of some sort that I wasn't able to find. I just want to clarify whether that was a spelling mistake or whether through this new reports process I've misplaced a report. If it could, someone please clarify option 1C. It doesn't make sense to me, please.
Ms. Jensen?
Through your worship, yes, if I may, the report had been prepared earlier in the month while we were waiting for feedback from the Capital Regional District. So it's very much an error on my part just to not update the recommendation, even though we had updated the rest of the dates within the report.
Okay, thank you.
So if I then the option is actually specifically referring to this report, not to some other report, with respect to the consultative steps.
That is correct. It would be to the July 9th report.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Don't see any other questions. I just need a motion then. We are going to have a first and second reading.
I'll move first and, do you want it together?
You can do it together.
Yeah. I'll move first and second reading of bylaw, Oak Bay Official Community Bylaw, Oak Bay Official Community Plan Bylaw Amendment number 4620.002, 2019.
It's 46. Oh. Okay. Okay. Fine. Yeah. The description up top has the numbers reversed, but you're right. That's the correct number. Thank you. So we have first and second reading and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a question for staff. With this going forward to regional review, do we have any idea on what the timeline for that is?
Ms. Jensen?
Through you, Your Worship, the Board of the Regional District has 120 days to respond. If we don't hear from them prior to that amount, it's deemed that they've accepted the context statement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. And that will go through all those stages and come back to us. Item number 17.
A point of procedure, if I may?
Yes, sure.
Just wanted to confirm, do we give recommendations A, B, and C, or just A? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, so A is all that's required. The other pieces are just procedural pieces that the staff will follow. The direction given at the Committee of the Whole should follow, is my understanding. Is that correct? No? Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
It's a question I had as well, so thank you for raising it. Item number 17, we have 1416, 1418 St. David Street, HRA. Ms. Jensen, we've had this at Committee of the Whole last week. That recommendation to us was to move forward with first and second reading and notification. So would you like to give any details on this application?
You're correct in everything that you just said. So essentially, it's an application for Heritage Revitalization Agreement. It's currently a legal non-conforming duplex. They're proposing to turn it into a 3-unit multifamily development. There would be 2 bylaws attached to this. One for the Heritage Revitalization Agreement itself that would look at how that building will be managed over time. The second piece is the Heritage Designation Bylaw. That building would now be designated as heritage as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And we would need, if council decides to move this forward, we'd have a motion for first and second reading and a separate motion to set a public hearing date of September 12th. Is that correct? Okay. So any questions of staff at this point? Can I get a motion? We can do first and second reading together.
Move first and second reading together.
This is bylaw 4730.
Sorry.
It's okay. I just want to make it clear for those watching at home. Any discussion? Councillor Zelka?
Thank you, Chair. Just once this is approved, I understand there's some sewer work or a plumbing perk that would have to be done with respect to some private properties and public properties. Just was wondering how would that fit into this whole process, assuming this goes forward? Just in terms of timing, I'm curious as to how that would proceed. Thank you.
I'll turn that to staff in terms of where that fits into the Heritage Revitalization Agreement process, the additional sewage works.
Sorry, perhaps if I could clarify, are we referring to the off-site works or the existing sewer pipe that's located at the rear of the property?
Good question. I don't know what off-site means in this case. Generally, I do, but because there's a private pipe involved, I'm not quite sure what that means and how that would be part of this process. I'm just curious at how that fits into the whole concept. It's so unique. Thank you.
Well, since we're doing the bylaw here, does that work form part of the Heritage Revitalization Agreement itself, the requirement to do the updates?
To clarify then, within the recommendation you have in front of council, we would be looking to secure a covenant prior to adoption of this agreement that would control that the applicant is responsible for ongoing maintenance of the existing sewer pipe until such time as it is removed and replaced with on-site off-street services. For the remainder of the off-street services, that would be addressed once the agreement is complete and they're undertaking the rest of the works for the home.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? A motion on the table. All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? Need a motion to set the public hearing date of September 12th.
Motion to set the public hearing date September 12th, 2019.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? And very similar, this is the designation bylaw for the same.
Move bylaw number first and second reading, bylaw 4731, 1416, 1418 St. David Street Heritage Designation.
Moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? And when you just need the public hearing date.
Move public hearing date September 12th, 2019 for Heritage Designation Bylaw 4731 for 1416 and 1418 St. David Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? Thank you very much. And with that, we are just about to adjourn to in camera. I'll need someone to read that out. Before we do, I just want to also, I was remiss in my mayor's remarks, but just to remind people, we are having our formal, as a council, we're going to be revealing a little plaque of recognition of service for former Mayor Nils Jensen this Friday at 10 o'clock in front of the Monterey Center. So if anybody wishes to attend, please do feel free to come out of that 10 o'clock this Friday. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that in accordance with sections 91E of the Community Charter that the open portion of the meeting of council be adjourned and that a closed session be convened to discuss the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality.
Second.
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? Thank you, everybody.